open to the floor. Questions, responses? We have the microphone going around.
Did it make sense? Yeah? Great. Okay.
So I asked the first question. Well, how did those mystical experiences change your life, transform you, and you became a different person, a new person?
Yeah. And so part of this too.
What happened?
Well, what happened with me was in 1989, I was a graduate student at Berkeley, and I got 3 papers accepted to different conferences. One to a conference in Tokyo, one a month later in Nanjing, China, and one a month later in Munich, Germany. And I convinced my advisor that it was cheaper to get a round the world in one direction ticket than 3 separate round trip tickets. But at the time, I was a starving grad student, so I only had $1,000 cash and no credit card. And I just traveled. I was in Beijing on June 20th, 1989. And I was in Nanjing and Shanghai during that time. I was in Hong Kong here during that time too, staying at the Chungking Mansion. I didn't have money. Thailand, and wherever I went, you would meet people, and although you have a different background and a different culture, just by making eye contact, you could connect with people. And so then the question was, what's the commonality in man? And so that led me to an interesting thing of looking at how is it that we have different backgrounds, but we're able to connect with each other? What is that thing that makes us all the same? So everyone's born, everyone dies, and while they're alive, they have to deal with themselves. And a lot of the dealing with themselves are looking at what are the things that I can or cannot talk about because of situations and cultures and everything. But if you realize that they're just psychological and there's no reality to them, then, and if you show someone both sides of the wall, that wall collapses and you can go to a deeper truth. And that investigation, coupled with just exploring the world, and when you travel, you probably know, those of you that travel the way I do with no planning, whenever you just travel, all these improbable things just start happening, and you realize, for most people, if you know what you're doing, kind of, that the universe has your back. Always, things always work out. And so I think those two things led to a deep inquiry that I had. After that, I did all of my office hours in a cafe and then would connect with people. And then this spiritual emergency thing happened to me 3 years later in 1992. I had an awakening experience. And then from that, our whole family started doing Qigong. And so and that was how I worked to stabilization.
How was it like, that experience?
Well,
how was it like?
Surreal things happen. You could read people's minds. You could see the future. A lot of, and then eventually, and it relates to the near-death experience as well too. Eventually, you see this light. Everything makes sense. You understand everything, and you know that if you go through this light, it's kind of, you go to the next level. And then when you come back from that, it's very disorienting. And for me, Qigong was very helpful, just to be able to self-regulate. And so the breath, being more, cultivating greater interoceptive awareness. And I actually just didn't know what happened at all. So afterwards, I got married, I had kids, I moved to Hong Kong. And then what happened was 10 years later, in 2002, my sister had a Vedanta teacher. I don't know if you know what Vedanta is, but Vedanta is the core of the Hindu religion, the Vedas. And she invited me to this workshop that lasted a week. And there was a teacher explaining the basis of Hindu philosophy. And then I sat there listening to it, and I'm like, wait a minute. I know all of this stuff from this thing that happened to me 10 years ago. I was like, that was real? And then that kind of triggered another experience. But then I had a good community there that was able to stabilize and ground. And, you go through, you see all your past lives, rebirthing, all of this stuff that you hear about kind of happens. It found out, my sister kind of freaked out during a period and put some headphones on with Sanskrit chanting, and somehow I knew what it said. I could process it, and I've never studied Sanskrit. So those of you that have been through this, your body actually knows what to do. And so it's part of Qigong practice is to let go of the need to control and just let the body, just kind of do what it does. And then to have kind of faith in the process.
For many people, those kind of mystical experiences come after some spiritual practice. In my case, I remember I went into all kinds of practicing, and then those things happened. But were you doing some kind of qigong or whatever before that experience?
No.
No. So there's no relation.
No. But I was a deep inquiry. It was deep inquiry. And usually, something that you're willing to go all in is involved. And at that time, I believe there was a woman involved. It's going to be something that you're going to project into.
Judging from your experience, who are the people who are most prone to this?
Well, so there's...
you have a profile.
Yeah, so there's what's called the right-hand path people and the left-hand path. Right-hand path is I follow the rules, I play the game, there's a certain structure in terms of how meetings are done, there's an organization and you climb the ladder and you play within the rules of the community and the society. And for those people, usually what can happen to trigger something is I become a workaholic, I push too hard and I burn out. Or what may happen is I lose my job, my parents die, and I get divorced all at the same time. And then I can't maintain reference anymore, and all of that anxiety and everything kicks out, and I'm in the not knowing state with high energy. That's one thing that will do it on the right-hand path side. But on the left-hand path, if I'm a seeker, I'm very deep in my spiritual practice, or I'm an entrepreneur and I push really hard, or I'm a scientist and I push really hard, or I want this woman to marry me and I'm pushing really hard. Whatever the thing is, and it kicks you out. Because what happens is normally your nervous system is fragmented and your ego kind of keeps you balanced in this way. But if you take all of your energies and your whole system is coupled to this one thing, and all of the totality of your previous experiences are all then coherent in one structured system, that's what's going to launch you.
Who would like to join us this course? Do we have any questions? You're going to speak in Chinese?
I try my best.
Hello, Dr. Yu. Thank you very much for coming here. So I want to say the last PowerPoint is that letting go of stories. It's quite easy to say that, but it's quite difficult for somebody who has some sad memories. How we can do that? And the second one is that I saw the word healer. So the healer, the words, is sold in the PowerPoint. So what is to be? What is to be the healer during the whole processing of the spiritual emergencies?
So for two things.
Yeah.
So first of all, if there's sadness, that has to be processed in some way. And so the thing about this, and the main processing for sadness ultimately is forgiveness, conceptually speaking, but it's also a release somatically speaking. And so the mind and the body are related. And so by bringing in true forgiveness, it allows that. And part of this is to realize that what happened in terms of the early trauma that may have created the sadness all of that has also given you gifts and have brought you to this moment. And so with that, underneath all the stories is this feeling, and just conceptually, first part of it is understanding, is that right here and right now, at the very core of your being, arguably at the very core of everyone's being, is the right here, right now, it's good to be alive experience. Right now, I may have been divorced or whatever, or you may have dropped your pen, or, all these things happen. But compared to physical death, most of the things that you're worried about are actually pretty meaningless. And so it's coming to that realization and really connecting to this right here, right now, it's good to be alive experience, and realizing that 14.7 billion years of evolution and development have brought you and I to this moment. If we didn't meet from Hofan, his daughter, if this didn't happen, if this wouldn't happen. And so part of this is understanding that. Now the issue with this is, for most people in the way you're taught, is as you develop, the energy system is limited. As you're growing, the energy is limited. And so what we do, because we have limited energy, is we segment things. These are stories. I don't have to worry about this. Oh, he's just leaving for this. She's just getting more water. And so you're just kind of segmenting everything. But part of, and because of that, the energy is limited. And part of this is all of the limitations that you have are also defense mechanisms that you've developed to keep you safe. But they're all artificial. And the main thing through this process is to cultivate greater somatic awareness, to allow yourself through forgiveness and through release work. With every out breath, can you just breathe in and then just relax? And really, ultimately, it's about accepting who you are right now and letting all of this go naturally, and then finding that connection to the innate joy of being. And you can do it psychologically through forgiveness and realizing the symbols and how those symbols have created a locking, or you can do it somatically through cranial sacral or body work like Rolfing or Feldenkrais, and there are a lot of these modalities, or related to healing, all of these esoteric approaches. There are people that have gifts with energy. So if you're stuck, they can use their energy to push through and make you realize, or an empath can make you aware of the holding that you may not be aware of. And then that's where collective shadow work is important. So I can't see my shadows, but I can see your shadows. And you can't see your shadows, but you can see my shadows. So how do we create the safe spaces to help us understand them and then create the space to heal? And what that does is, if we bring a bunch of people together with a collective intention, then a field is created that then lifts everybody, and then these realizations can come in.
Yes, how about acceptance?
And so for healers, usually what happens is when either someone's born or when someone pops, they develop gifts. And so some people have kind of energy gifts. Some people, like if I look at you right now, and then if we maintain eye contact, and then if I ask you to be hyper aware, and then just because of the physiological resonance, if we maintain eye contact here, if I ask you to be hyper aware, you can be aware of your breath. You're taking a deeper breath right now. But if I ask you to just be aware of your breath and just be hyper aware of everything that's happening right now.
Dr. Yu, if I am a blind people, how we can use the eye contact?
Well, there are other modalities of touch. There's direct current stimulation of what we know about the brain right now. There's vibration. There's massage. There's energy work. There are many modalities, many different modalities. There are people that, with their intention and ideas, with permission, they can kind of go in and sort things out as well too. A lot of this is fairly esoteric, and we have people around the world, and we're doing research in this area as well too. It's an exciting area. But part of this is the human potential side of things.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
You are most welcome to join
But the
us.
main thing, the best thing for healing is your own body. Your body naturally wants to heal itself, but usually it's the psyche that suppresses. You know, if you look at how you're breathing right now, comparing how you're breathing now to how you're breathing while you're asleep, you know, it's very different. You know, if you have a wife or a child and when they're sleeping, you know, it's all deep belly breath. It's all diaphragm, kind of relaxed breath state. But usually when they're awake, the breathing is going to change. You're going to feel tightness in different parts of your body because the brain and all of the previous experiences are kind of... But the body naturally wants to heal itself.
If you would like to join us in Chinese, you are most welcome. I will interpret for you.
I would like to ask a question that you mentioned about the reborn and the surrender. You just mentioned in the presentation that you about reborn and surrender
Yeah.
Christianity. I would like to ask you your personal experience. Do you really experience reborn and your full surrender?
Yeah.
Can you tell something about your own personal experience about reborn? Can you tell us some personal experience or spiritual experience about the reborn and surrender?
Well, so the thing about this again is normally what people do is when they look at things, they segment things into stories, and they segment that. But the mystical path and the awakening experience makes you realize in an experiential way, there's a difference between a conceptual knowing and an experiential knowing, that there are bigger forces at work, that the universe has a plan. And you probably know this, certain things when you try to do something, it happens very fluidly and effortlessly. Other things, no matter how hard you try, it just doesn't happen. It's like, oh shoot, I tried here, oh, what, you missed this again, and no, this just doesn't feel right, they're not the right person, etc., etc. And so with that, it's really when you empty the mind, and so initially when you're born, things happen around, they go through the body, you start building a belief system. Now, for most people, it's my thoughts and my beliefs. I act through the physiology. I engage the material world. Reality then responds, which influences how I feel and how I think. So I'm doing this. And so let's say, oh, James is about to leave. Let's say I'm going to invest in, something tells me I'm going to invest in Bitcoin because I think it's going to go up or something like this. And you try it out, and then it influences how you feel. And so I'm doing this, and I'm expanding my knowledge and going to higher energy states. When you fully decouple, you're feeling your body. It's a different way of processing, and things just happen, and then things go through the body, and then they just show up in thought. Hey, I feel like I should do, I don't know why, but I'm going to go here. And I don't know why, but I'm going to go here. And then you start doing this, and then all of these highly improbable things start happening, and you just feel your way through. It's like feeling your way in the dark. And then after doing this for a while and sensing it and refining, and really it's not taking in your beliefs, but it's reconnecting to your inner compass, and then just knowing and feeling. And I don't know why I'm doing this, or if you play guitar or something. Yeah, it's like when you're playing a solo, do you know what you're going to play beforehand?
Yeah, that's the way I'm trying. I always keep jamming and
So he's a musician. So anyone that's a musician, what happens is, how do you know what you're going to play next?
Yeah, by the way, nice to meet you, Mr. Yu.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite funny. Where should I start? Maybe sometimes I can speak just louder.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Oh, okay.
So my point, let me just jump to the point. But the point is, arguably, when you're playing a solo, you're just in a state.
Like something like maybe my student wanna cover a song, and it forced me to play that film.
Okay.
Okay. Hello. So, yeah, I think it would be nice. Maybe sometimes my student want to cover a song, and it forced me to play with him, and in the process, I would realize, oh, should I really focus on this task? Or maybe even when I only played 10%, I realized, oh, my hand don't want completely to finish this thing. Rather than that, I want to recompose something with this technique or with these things. And recently, when I just finished like a 10% of the cover of the song, and I start to compose my own song. Yeah, and it is my way
So
to.
when you compose your own song, where do those notes come from?
Because it's like some different ways keep happening. Like I always ask myself, what is the relationship between me and music? And at last, for this moment, I think it is an emotional expression rather than techniques. And when my student want me to focus on techniques, and suddenly I turn it back to emotion. And I try it, and then it turns out to be something different. But for my case, I think I need some consistency to keep pushing myself to finish it. But still, I cannot tell how much impact or effectiveness for what I'm doing to the society.
So my point here with this, in using the music as an analogy, is that when you're in your state, when you're in kind of a flow state, in your present, you can access these other forms of knowing. And if you start then engaging from that, just see where that takes you. And what you're doing is you're letting go of acting from a conditioned mind and belief, and it's a shifting to acting from and living from intuition and insight, and knowing without knowing how you know. And then you just explore it all in with your complete earnest. And then as you investigate that, and then look at, rather than driving by the stories, what are the emotions motivating the action? And then somatically, fear, need, and desire feel very different from joy, gratitude, and wonder. And so what are the emotions and what are the forces that are driving you to do what you're doing? And as you engage, how does the reality respond? And ultimately, how does that which you think is you engage that which you think is not you? And then as you start exploring that in a non-causal, not tied to story, emergent way, your whole relationship with reality will change. And then you'll have a direct experience, a direct relationship with that which enables all of this, which people would call God.
Yes. I agree, and it is quite crazy, but I still feel like I don't know where it's gonna bring me to. Yeah. So I'm here.
And so part of that slide is, can you rest in not knowing?
Yeah.
And so for me, I actually wear a pendant here to remind myself. So I wear this fossil, which is a trilobite. It's a creature that's about 500 million years old. So 500 million years ago, a creature was swimming in the ocean, and then it died. And then now it's sitting around my neck. And the reason why is, if you think of 500 million years ago, to the time of my life, this and everything that you're trying to do is pretty close to nothing in the big picture of things, right? And that's a conceptual knowing. But from an experiential knowing perspective, as soon as I die, you guys, all of Hong Kong, this whole universe is gone. Right? And so there are two very different perspectives. One, I'm like nothing. The other side, all of this was, in a sense, created for me. And what experiment can you do to prove which one is real? Right? And so if you go into your truth, what is this? What is all of this? If you ask yourself truly, what is this? What is all of this? And if you go into your deep truth, and if you're honest with yourself, the answer to that question is, I have no idea. And if you don't know what any of this is, what makes you think you know what any of this is? And if you don't know what any of this is, what are the stories that are driving you, that are creating conflict, creating anxiety, creating strife? Why am I not content with this? Having said all of that, right now for certain, the thing that's aware of this exists. I am in this, I may not know what's outside of this room, but I know right now that I'm in this room. Simon's here right now too. And I know that I have a ticket to the show. I may not know what this is, but I have a ticket to the show. And if you can rest in stillness and observe the show, initially you may not know what's going on. But just like watching a foreign film, if you sit and stare at it long enough, you start getting an idea of what's going on in the movie. And then you can play along. And so that's this mystical path of not knowing, but really exploring and knowing where you're coming from in the engagement. And so I may not see any of you ever again for the rest of my life. No, I have kids that are leaving for university. But I know that right now we have this moment, and this is a miracle. And all I can do, how best can I honor this moment? And if you can then do that with each moment, then your whole relationship with reality changes. And you realize how wonderful and what a magical experience existence truly is.
Wonderful. Who would like to ask the last question? It has to be a quick one. We've only got 4 more minutes.
Thanks very much for your sharing and the work that you're working in. I think it's very meaningful, and especially I believe that every generation has its own mission on carrying on those ancient knowledge which already comes from like thousands of years. And also like both Dr. Chau contributes a lot in the spiritual education, and now there is like I think the community is really important. So my question is, and I think many people might also be interested in, because I think some of us don't want to let you go after this talk. I mean, don't want to like missing you in the rest of our lives. So I would just like to ask, do we have any access to your work, like your research and, for example, your Antarabav project? And is there anything happening in Hong Kong or something like that?
There's a lot. If you will look at the woman in the red behind you with the red scarf, her name is Kay. And we actually have a calendar of different events all around. And we are working towards building community. And it's kind of like a growing, it's a collective question to the universe, actually.
Yeah.
And so some of the things that we're doing right now is, I think with Body, Mind, Spirit platform, we are planning a festival, and there's another group that's also has done the Waterfront Festival, and we're planning on doing festivals on a regular basis that bring gatherings of people together, different people. It's just kind of a calling to see, almost like mining, right? And so you'll get some people that are just interested in, hey, I have anxiety attacks, I have stress, how do I cope with that? And so you have those kind of people. And then you have people that have had spiritual emergency experiences and everything. And so the idea is to have like an open call for these festivals that's just very neutral. It's arts, it's music, it's food, and activities. And we're planning these in Lai Chi Kok. And then we're going to do these on a regular basis. But then right now we actually have weekly and monthly meetups as well too, that do kind of more kind of one-on-one, a group things, especially for people that are kind of the outlier, awakening, stabilization, sustainability, and thriving. And so we're just kind of building a community among that and looking at new, doing this collective healing, shadow work, but then also looking at creating new opportunities for sustainable models, especially people kind of post-awakening towards kind of sustainability and everything. And so we have a number of people on Wednesdays from 6 to 9 p.m. We're usually at local Famaland, Larry Tang's restaurant in Sai Yun Poon. On once a month, we're at Betty Lau's Nada Sound Healing and Lai Chi Kok. And then we have other gatherings. Occasionally, we have sunrises at the peak, led by Chandan Sethi. And we have a number of practitioners in the network that offer services, like Kay here does a Lomi Lomi massage, and there are other people. Can I mention you? Yeah, so Catherine here is an intuitive, and so if you have any questions or stuff, she actually gets downloads on people's lives and everything, but you have to give her permission and everything. And so we have a number of people already among the community. We're actually looking at gamifying this way, in some way, of doing something where, maybe with NFTs or something, each person, if you know Gino's known for this symbol, and we can have wallets, and we can have, people that you've had experiences with, just to help document the community and maybe turn it into like a treasure hunt or something like this in Hong Kong in doing gatherings. We have access to a lot of physical spaces, and there are a lot of really talented people with insights that can do workshops and share. And so we're really looking at identifying people in the community and then, creating activities month-round, year-round, weekly, and everything. Talented musicians and everything. And, music has a lot. Music can do a lot. Movement, David Leung is coming back. And so, just body work, movement, there's a lot of things that can be done to help with overcoming sadness and healing and shadow work and having people with a lot of energy to be able to hold space. And then the other thing is, if we can get more coherent together, then looking at working, with farms, and then maybe getting homeless people working on farms, and then working on rehabilitating them and transforming them. There are many, many opportunities of things that can be done. And it's just, right now, I think this is just kind of a start, and we're just looking for people that are interested in getting involved with the festivals that we're doing and everything, and activities. And I brought a stack of cards, so if you want a card, you can feel free to contact me directly. We do have a calendar that Kay oversees of events. And then for Antarabha, there's a woman named Hainal that's driving that right now. We get together on the app Clubhouse, and so I think we're doing things on Tuesdays and Thursdays to address questions. And then we're more than happy to run more workshops and everything, because ultimately, if you've been through this process, we're all kind of on the same team. And so how do we kind of collectively support each individual along their personal journey? And then I have a lab at PolyU as well, too. The Star Trek looking building.
Well, 10 years from now, looking back, I think I will remember two words towards the end of your presentation, and that is reality response. When the mind is calm enough, when we go into peace, mystical experiences turn up, and I hope that more and more of us will enjoy this kind of existence out there. And so we have to thank Gino for coming this evening to tell us about his experience in dealing with those people. And I'm sure his wonderful work will be serving this community very well. On behalf of the platform, I would like to thank you, Gino.
Right.
Thank you.